If you're waiting for an interview, ma'am, you can't stay in that chair. The woman beneath the gold Bennett International logo looked up slowly, as if the sentence had traveled a long distance to reach her. Around her, the headquarters glittered with the kind of money that wanted to be admired. Marble floors reflected warm chandelier light. Towering glass walls held the city in silver. Leather chairs curved around low tables stacked with luxury travel magazines. Employees in fitted suits crossed the lobby with coffee, badges, and the practiced speed of people who believed confidence and importance were the same thing. She had been sitting there for 5 hours and 51 minutes. The phone in her hand told her that. Vanessa Cole, the receptionist behind the stone desk, folded her arms. Her smile had been gone for hours. "You've already been here all day," she said. "If no one is coming for you, you'll need to move." A few feet away, someone laughed. Not loudly, just enough. The woman set her phone in her lap and answered in a voice so calm it almost sounded merciful. "Thank you. I understand. I'm waiting for someone." Vanessa glanced at the clock. For nearly 6 hours? The woman looked past her toward the coffee bar, where 2 executives had just noticed her again and exchanged amused looks. Near the elevators, an assistant whispered something to a coworker, and both of them smiled at her plain blouse, her low black heels, her worn leather handbag, as if simple things had personally insulted expensive furniture. Then the woman looked back at Vanessa. "Yes," she said. "I'm still here." Nobody in that lobby knew they were speaking to Amara Bennett. Nobody knew the quiet woman in the chair owned the company whose name covered the wall behind her. And nobody understood that every rude glance, every whispered joke, every polished insult was being stored away by the very person who had signed off on the values this building was supposed to represent. That morning, Amara had stepped out of a black sedan a block away instead of at the main curb. She had told her driver to leave unless she called. She wanted to arrive alone. She had dressed exactly the way she intended to be seen by people who judged too quickly. Beige blouse, dark slacks, plain coat. No jewelry worth noticing, no designer labels, no assistant, no bodyguard. Just a leather bag, a phone, and the kind of composure that usually made insecure people even meaner. Bennett International was Amara's life work. In less than 20 years, she had built it from one struggling boutique hotel into one of the most respected luxury hospitality and corporate service companies in the city. She had approved every inch of the headquarters. Marble, art, lighting, music, scent, layout, furniture. But more than that, she had written the company creed herself. "Every person who enters our doors will be treated with dignity before they are treated as clients, candidates, or customers." She wrote it because she knew what it felt like to enter polished spaces and be judged before being greeted. She knew what it meant to be measured by clothes, skin, silence, age, and assumptions before anyone bothered to ask your name with real respect. So twice a year, without warning, she visited one of her own properties dressed simply and watched what happened when no one thought power had arrived. Sometimes she left proud. Today, she had known within minutes that something was broken. When she first walked into the lobby just after 8, Vanessa had looked up with a perfect corporate smile and asked, "Do you have an appointment?" "Not exactly," Amara had answered. That was all it took. Vanessa's smile thinned. "Who are you here to see?" "The person in charge." A tiny laugh escaped her. "And your name?" "Amara Bennett." Vanessa pretended to check the guest list. "I don't have anyone by that name scheduled today." If this is about employment, Human Resources handles walk-ins from the south entrance. I'm not here for Human Resources. Then who exactly are you here for? Like I said, Amara replied, the person in charge. Vanessa had already decided what kind of woman she was dealing with. It showed in the way she pointed Amara toward the far chairs near the windows instead of the guest area closer to the executive elevators. You can sit there for a few minutes. If no one comes down, you'll need to leave. Amara sat. At 8:19, Marcus Reed approached. He was the senior security supervisor on the morning shift, broad-shouldered, neat, serious. Not naturally cruel, but dangerously easy to influence by the tone powerful people set. "Morning, ma'am," he said. "Need help contacting whoever you're here to see?" "No, thank you. I'm all right." "Do you have a name?" "I do." He almost smiled. "The name of the person you're meeting." "I know," Amara said. "And I'm still all right." Marcus glanced toward Vanessa. Vanessa gave a little shrug that somehow managed to look professional and dismissive at the same time. Company policy doesn't allow people to remain in the lobby indefinitely without a scheduled host, Marcus said. "How long is indefinitely?" Amara asked. "That depends. On policy? Or on how I look sitting here?" He paused, then said, "I'll check back in a little while." He did. So did Vanessa's stare. The first hour taught Amara more than any leadership report could have. Vanessa was all warmth for people who looked expensive. "Right this way, Mr. Hines. Can I get you coffee, Dr. Morrison? They're expecting you upstairs." But every time she addressed Amara, the warmth vanished. "Ma'am, are you sure you shouldn't be in the employment office?" "Ma'am, those seats are for scheduled guests." "Ma'am, if no one is coming for you, I need the area clear." Each sentence was polished enough to sound acceptable. Each one still carried contempt. At 9:03, a maintenance worker carrying tools slowed and asked Amara, "You okay, miss? Need some water?" Before she could answer, Vanessa said from the desk, "She's fine." Amara looked at the worker. "Thank you, I'm all right." He nodded and moved on. Amara took a small notebook from her bag and wrote one line. 9:03. Maintenance offered help before management. At 9:26, a nervous young man arrived for an interview. Vanessa stood up for him, offered coffee, and told him, "Take a breath. You're going to do great." Amara wrote again. Courtesy increases when anxiety arrives in a suit. By 10:30, Marcus's tone had hardened. Vanessa had been narrating Amara to him for over 2 hours, and suspicion spreads easily when it comes dressed as certainty. "Ma'am," he said, "if you can't state official business, I may have to escort you out." Amara looked from him to Vanessa and back again. "Would you escort every unscheduled person out?" she asked quietly. "Or only the ones you believe can't possibly matter?" Vanessa stiffened. "Let's not do that." "Do what?" Amara asked. "Turn this into something else." "That depends on what it already is." Marcus shifted, uncomfortable but still unwilling to name the real problem. "Just stay seated for now," he said. "We'll revisit this if necessary." By noon, the wait itself had become a show. People who had seen Amara at 9 were seeing her again at lunch. Same chair, same blouse, same handbag, same patience. Her silence became an open space others rushed to fill, with assumptions that made them feel superior. A woman from accounting whispered, "She's still here?" A man with 2 coffees muttered, "Maybe she's waiting for a cleaning job." Another said, "Then she'd know where to go by now." They laughed. Amara heard everything. Her fingers tightened once around the strap of her bag. Her eyes stung for a moment, but she blinked the feeling away. This was not the first time she had been underestimated. It was just the first time in years that it had happened under her own name. At 12:22, a cafeteria runner almost dropped a stack of boxed lunches. One container slipped. Amara rose and caught it before it hit the floor. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. "You're welcome." Vanessa looked over. "Use the service elevator next time," she called sharply. The young man hurried away, embarrassed. Amara sat again. "Was he hurt?" Vanessa frowned. "What?" He looked embarrassed. "I asked if he was hurt." Vanessa dismissed it with a shrug. "He was in the wrong corridor." Amara held her gaze. "So the concern is the corridor." Vanessa turned back to her screen. "You ask a lot of questions for someone with nowhere to be." The insult stayed in the air. Amara said only, "Sometimes questions are how you take a room's temperature." At 1:04, Daniel Brooks arrived. He entered the lobby with 2 colleagues and Rochelle King, his executive assistant. Daniel wore authority the way some men wore cologne, too much of it, and mostly for himself. Tailored navy suit, gold watch, perfect smile. The kind of senior executive who mistook arrogance for polish because too many people had rewarded him for the confusion. He noticed Amara immediately. "She's still here?" he asked Vanessa. Vanessa lowered her voice, but not enough. "Since this morning. Says she's waiting for the person in charge." Daniel laughed openly. His colleagues laughed with him. Rochelle gave a small automatic smile because that was what survival often looked like around men like Daniel. He looked at Amara and said, "That's the trouble with polished lobbies. Some people walk through the front door and suddenly think they belong wherever the lighting is expensive." One of the men with him smirked. Amara looked up. "Can I help you?" That made them laugh harder. Daniel stepped closer. "Actually, ma'am, I was going to help you understand something. This isn't a public lounge." "I understand where I am," Amara said. "Do you?" "Better than most people in this room." The answer should have warned him. Instead, it entertained him. "That's confidence," Daniel said. "Misplaced, but confidence." Amara's voice remained steady. "What do you do here?" "Senior Executive Operations." "Then I assume you care how people are treated in your building?" He repeated the phrase with amused disbelief. "My building?" "That's what you implied." Daniel's smile sharpened. "What I implied is that this isn't a place where people can sit around all day hoping proximity turns into importance." The sentence hit exactly as he intended. Amara felt it. Her jaw tightened once, then relaxed. "I know," she said. He turned to leave. "Do you know who owns this building?" she asked. Daniel looked back. "Of course I do." Amara held his gaze. "Are you sure?" Something uncertain crossed his face for the first time all day. Then he laughed it off and headed toward the elevators. As the doors closed, Rochelle looked back and saw Amara writing in her notebook. That was the first moment Rochelle felt uneasy. At 1:40, Marcus returned with printed visitor policies, as if paper could fix what culture had already exposed. "Prolonged waiting without a host isn't permitted," he said. "How long is prolonged?" Amara asked. "That falls under staff discretion. That's not policy," she said. "That's mood." Marcus's face tightened. He wasn't a bad man, Amara thought. But he was exactly the kind of man a bad environment could borrow. Someone else's prejudice had started sounding like his procedure. At 2:06, Amara checked a private executive access app on her phone. One of the younger officers caught a glimpse of the icon and whispered to Marcus that he'd seen it used only by senior leadership. Marcus dismissed him, but doubt had entered the room. At 2:18, Rochelle passed through the lobby alone and slowed near Amara's chair. "You've been here a long time," she said quietly. "I have." "Are you really waiting for someone specific?" "Yes." "Then why not call them?" Amara gave a faint smile. "I did." Rochelle glanced toward Vanessa. "And they left you down here?" "So far." That answer bothered her. "Look," Rochelle said carefully, "Vanessa can get territorial, and Daniel thinks every space needs a hierarchy." "Territorial," Amara repeated. "About status." Amara studied her. Rochelle wasn't cruel. She was compromised. That difference mattered, but not enough to make her harmless. "And what do you think?" Amara asked. Rochelle hesitated. "I think anybody who can sit in one chair for 6 hours without yelling is either very lost or very sure of herself." For the first time all day, Amara smiled for real. "That's observant." As Rochelle walked away, her eyes drifted to the oil painting behind Amara's chair. Beneath it, on a brass plaque, were words she had passed 100 times without seeing. "Donated from the private collection of A. Bennett." Her pulse jumped. At 2:47, the scene that would burn into everyone's memory happened almost casually. Daniel stood near the coffee bar with 2 executives and a consultant. Vanessa watched from the desk. Rochelle hovered nearby, no longer comfortable in her own skin. Amara sat alone in the leather chair, exhausted but upright, her bag at her feet, her coat folded neatly beside her. One executive glanced over and joked, "She's committed." Daniel followed his gaze and laughed. "She's been sitting there all day. Doesn't she realize nobody important is coming?" The consultant grinned. The woman in the white suit covered her mouth while laughing. Another man pointed with his coffee cup. "Maybe she thinks persistence can buy access." Vanessa smiled. Rochelle let out the beginning of a laugh and hated herself for it immediately. Amara heard everything. She closed her eyes for one brief second. Then she smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, because the test was over. Rochelle saw that smile and felt cold all the way down her back. At 3:01, Amara stood and walked toward the bronze floor map near the elevators. Marcus moved immediately. "Ma'am, that corridor is restricted." Amara studied the map. Why was the West Wing renovated? Marcus frowned. "Excuse me?" Daniel turned. "How would you know about the West Wing?" Amara glanced back at him. "I pay attention." Her finger hovered over the layout. The old stone stained too easily. The new cut was a better choice. Traffic flows cleaner now. The bottleneck near the conference suites is gone. Silence passed through the lobby. Daniel recovered first. "You've spent too much time wandering office buildings." Amara returned to her chair. "Or maybe some people spend too little time noticing them." At 3:17, her phone rang. The whole lobby heard it. She answered on the second ring. "Yes, I'm still here." Vanessa stopped typing. Daniel watched openly. Amara listened, then said, "No, don't come downstairs yet." A pause. "Not yet," she repeated. She ended the call. The silence afterward felt different. Daniel took a step toward her. Who was that? Someone concerned, Amara said. Concerned enough to leave you sitting here? Concerned enough to trust me. That answer unsettled him because it suggested power without displaying it. At 3:35, Rochelle searched the company archive and found a 10-year-old photo from a founding gala. The woman at the center of it was younger and wearing black silk instead of beige cotton. But it was Amara. By the time Rochelle made it back to the lobby, Daniel was already approaching her again. He wasn't amused anymore. He was angry that her calm had survived him. "Let's end this," he said. "If you're here for an interview, you've missed it. If you're looking for a handout, wrong place. If you're confused, security can escort you outside." "Daniel," Rochelle said sharply. He ignored her. Amara stood. She wasn't physically imposing, but the room still seemed to rearrange itself around her. "You seem very certain about me," she said. "I'm certain about boundaries," Daniel replied. "No," Amara said. "You're certain about appearances. That's easier." Vanessa stood behind the desk. Marcus stepped closer. People near the coffee bar stopped pretending not to watch. Daniel gave a cold smile. People walk into expensive buildings every day and start imagining they belong there. Amara's jaw tightened just slightly. Then she asked, almost gently, "Do you know what kind of person says that to a stranger?" "Someone protecting company space." "No," said Amara. "Someone who believes dignity is a luxury item." Before he could answer, the private executive elevators chimed. Not the public bank, the restricted one. Every head turned. The doors opened, and Ethan Bennett stepped out at a pace just short of a run. The effect on the room was instant. Vanessa stood so quickly, her chair rolled backward. Marcus straightened. Daniel adjusted his jacket. Rochelle stopped breathing. Everyone expected Ethan to walk past Amara. He didn't. He crossed the marble floor, past the reception desk, past Daniel Brooks, and stopped directly in front of the woman they had mocked all day. His face changed first. Not with surprise, with remorse. "Mrs. Bennett," he said. Silence hit the lobby like a dropped curtain. Vanessa's lips parted. Marcus stared. Daniel's expression emptied. Rochelle covered her mouth. Amara met Ethan's eyes. "Good afternoon, Ethan." His voice lowered. "We've been waiting for you upstairs." "No," Amara said. "You've been waiting upstairs." He understood exactly what she meant. Then Ethan turned toward the room. "Everyone," he said clearly, "this is Amara Bennett." No one moved. He let the sentence breathe just long enough to hurt. Then he finished it. "Founder and owner of Bennett International." The lobby froze. Vanessa's face lost all color. Daniel took one step back. Marcus looked like he had forgotten how to stand. Ethan's voice turned colder. "She owns this company." The truth crashed through the room all at once. The woman they had questioned, laughed at, displaced, and humiliated for nearly 6 hours was the person behind the company that paid them. Amara looked at Vanessa first. "You kept asking whether I belonged here." Vanessa's voice shook. "Mrs. Bennett, I am so sorry. I didn't realize." "No," Amara said. "You didn't." Nothing in her tone was loud. That made it devastating. Daniel cleared his throat. There has clearly been a misunderstanding. Amara turned to him. Has there? If I had known. Exactly, she said. He stopped. Marcus stepped forward. Mrs. Bennett, I was following security procedure. Amara faced him. At first. Then you were following tone. Those are not the same thing. Marcus lowered his eyes. Rochelle stood motionless. Amara looked at her next. When did you figure it out? A few minutes ago, Rochelle whispered. The painting, then the archive photo. Before that, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't stop it. Thank you for telling the truth, Amara said. That mercy hit Rochelle harder than anger would have. Then Amara stepped into the center of the lobby and looked around at the marble, the glass, the gold logo, the expensive chairs, and the faces that had revealed themselves when they thought no real power was watching. When she spoke, it was not with rage, it was disappointment. I came here today because numbers don't tell me everything, she said. Revenue reports do not tell me how a stranger gets treated at 8 in the morning. Performance charts do not tell me what happens to someone who doesn't look wealthy, connected, polished, or useful. Employee surveys do not tell me whether my own headquarters has become a place where appearance matters more than dignity. No one interrupted. I didn't come here to punish anyone. I came here to find out what happens to people who don't look powerful. Vanessa bowed her head. Marcus stared at the floor. Daniel stood still, like a man realizing his confidence had just become evidence. Amara looked directly at him. You said something earlier about people who think expensive buildings belong to them simply because they can walk through the doors. Daniel's face tightened. You were right about one thing, she said. Confusion flickered in his eyes. Amara swept her gaze across the lobby. Everyone in this building works here, including the people whose names are on the payroll. Then she looked at him again. And every paycheck you receive is ultimately authorized by the company I built. The sentence landed like a verdict. Daniel went pale. Amara continued. If I had arrived this morning in designer clothes with a driver at the curb, none of this would have happened. Coffee would have appeared. Smiles would have appeared. Help would have appeared. Because too many of you perform excellence when you think status is watching. She rested one hand on the back of the chair where she had spent the day. But character is what you do when the person in front of you looks like they can offer you nothing. That is when the truth comes out. Today it came out all over this lobby. Her voice softened, and somehow that made it worse. When I was 26, I walked into a hotel ballroom carrying the first pitch deck for this company in a folder that cost less than the valet tips outside. A man looked at me, looked at my shoes, and asked if I was there to refill water. I never forgot that feeling. I promised myself that if I ever built something under my name, nobody working for me would make another person feel that way if I could help it. Her eyes glistened. So no, I'm not upset because I was inconvenienced. I'm disappointed because too many of you still think respect is something you hand to the well-dressed and withhold from everyone else. A maintenance worker stood near the back of the crowd, tool belt still on. Amara noticed him immediately. You offered me water this morning, she said. He startled. Yes, ma'am, thank you. He blinked. I was just being polite. Amara nodded. Exactly. Then she turned to Ethan. Effective immediately, Vanessa Cole is to be placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation into front desk conduct and visitor treatment. Vanessa looked up in horror. Daniel Brooks is removed from supervisory authority pending investigation into abuse of position and public humiliation of a visitor. I want interviews with every assistant and associate who reports through his office, confidentially. Daniel stared at Ethan. You cannot be serious, Ethan answered without emotion. She owns the company, Daniel. Adjust your assumptions accordingly. Amara turned to Marcus. You will remain on duty for now, but I want security retraining across headquarters and every major property. Bias, escalation, visitor dignity, and the difference between vigilance and contempt. You'll help build it. Marcus nodded immediately. Yes, ma'am. Finally, she looked at Rochelle. You laughed. Rochelle's eyes filled. I know. Why? Because everyone else did. Because I work for him. Because I told myself I'd speak later. Amara nodded. That is how bad cultures survive. Not just through cruel people. Through decent people who delay their courage. Rochelle closed her eyes. Then Amara gave her a chance. You noticed the clues. You tried to interrupt him before the reveal. That doesn't erase the first failure, but it matters. You'll submit a written account of everything you saw today, including your own silence. After that, Ethan and I will decide whether your future here includes more responsibility or none at all. Rochelle nodded through tears. Understood. Amara looked back at the room. This company was not built on marble, she said. It was not built on chandeliers, expensive suits, or executive titles. It was built on service. And service is not how warmly you greet people who can reward you. Service is how you treat the person who seems to have nothing to offer. If you work here, remember that. If you lead here, live it. And if someone walks through these doors wearing simple clothes and carrying no visible power, give respect first. Everything else can be clarified after. No one spoke. Amara picked up her notebook and closed it. On the page were short lines written in steady handwriting. 9:03. Maintenance offered water before leadership. 10:30. Procedure replaced by contempt. 1:04. Executive mockery begins. 2:47. Group ridicule, no intervention. 3:17. Suspicion rises only after power is implied. She looked at the room one last time. Evidence is simple when people feel safe being ugly. Then she turned and walked toward the executive elevators with Ethan beside her. The crowd parted in silence. Vanessa stood behind the desk in tears. Marcus looked shaken to the bone. Daniel no longer looked powerful at all. Rochelle held her tablet against her chest like she was trying to hold herself together with it. At the elevator, Ethan said quietly, I should have come down sooner. Amara kept her eyes forward. If you had, I would have learned less. And suffered less. That made her look at him. His remorse was real. Sometimes the truth is expensive, she said softly. That's why so few people go looking for it. The doors closed. By the next morning, the investigation had begun. Complaint records showed patterns. Visitor logs showed patterns. Junior staff told the truth once they felt safe enough to tell it. Vanessa's contempt had history. Daniel's arrogance had victims. Marcus had let other people's assumptions become his own procedure. Vanessa was terminated after the review confirmed repeated misconduct. Daniel was removed from leadership and then from the company. His numbers were strong. His culture was poison. Marcus kept his role, but not unchanged. Under Amara's order, he helped build new training across the company so professionalism could never again hide disrespect that easily. Rochelle stayed, but not in the same role. She moved into leadership development, where courage was no longer something she could borrow from the room. Amara never turned the incident into a public spectacle. She didn't need branding. She needed change. And change came. Months later, a plainly dressed older man entered headquarters, looking embarrassed and unsure where vendor billing was handled. The new receptionist offered him water, called the department, and walked him halfway there herself. Marcus saw it from security and smiled. That was the real victory. Not that powerful people had been frightened, that ordinary people had finally learned to act with dignity even when nobody important seemed to be watching. Because in the end, the woman they ignored all day wasn't waiting for someone important to arrive. She was waiting to see who they really were. And the people laughing in that lobby learned too late that the quiet person in the corner may be the very person whose judgment shapes your future, signs your opportunities, and remembers exactly how you treated them when you thought they were nobody. So never judge a person by what they appear to have. Never confuse simple clothes with small value. Never assume a quiet person is powerless. And never forget that respect means the most when it is given before status enters the room. If this story hit you hard, comment one word: respect. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still needs the reminder that dignity is not a reward for looking important. It's what every human being deserves the moment they walk through the door. If you've ever been judged before you were heard, let this story stay with you the next time a stranger crosses your path. Because the person you dismiss too quickly might be carrying a struggle, a story, or authority you'd never guess. And the respect you choose in that small moment may say more about you than success ever will.